I think the new normal that Trump has created in terms of corruption is every day is corrupt with Trump, that you don't, in one hand, none of this is surprising, but on the other hand, I don't want to underplay it as to make it seem like this is no big deal. I mean, it is a big deal. Any other president, if this came out, that the president basically lied to the people, oversold, and invented the fact that he was a successful businessman, when in reality, he's a grifter, as the, let me show you the image Colin made, Grifter Trump. There's Donald out in the streets with his can, begging. He's got that $300 million coming real quick, real quick. So none of this surprises me, but it is a big deal that the president of the United States in a few years is personally on the hook for $300 to $400 million. It is a big deal that the president of the United States is on the hook, that has been basically has paid less taxes than most working class people over the last few years. It is a big deal that the president of the United States essentially is extremely conflicted and has major conflicts of interest. So whether it will matter or not, we'll get to later. But let's show you the biggest parts of the story. Trump's avoidance of income taxes is one of the most striking discoveries in his tax returns, especially given his vast wash of income itemized elsewhere in those filings. Mr. Trump's net income from his fame, his 50% share of The Apprentice, together with the riches showered upon him by the scores of suitors paying to use his name, totaled $427.4 million through 2018. A further $176.5 million in profit came to him through his investments in two highly successful office buildings. So, how did he escape nearly all taxes on that fortune? Even the effective tax rate paid by the wealthiest 1% of Americans could have caused him to pay more than $100 million. The answer rests in a third category of Mr. Trump's endeavors: businesses that he owns and runs himself. The collective and persistent losses he reported from them largely absolved him from paying federal income taxes on the $600 million from The Apprentice, branding deals, and investments. That equation is a key element of the alchemy of Mr. Trump's finances. Quote, not quote, using the proceeds of his celebrity to purchase and prop up risky businesses, then wielding their losses to avoid taxes. To me, this is the takeaway of the entire story. That Trump, when he actually was making money and not in debt, and was making a profit, it seems though either intentionally or just because he's a bad business person, he ended up investing in so many businesses, and he's not a good business person. So when those businesses started to bleed financially, we're talking the golf courses around the world, the office buildings, all of the endeavors that Trump has put himself into, that when he was making money, what he did with the money was took that money, invested it in basically creating a whole bunch of different businesses that started bleeding money. And as a result, if you're bleeding money, therefore you're taking a loss every year, you're not going to owe money on taxes. In some cases, you'll actually get a tax rebate. So basically Trump, because his signature success was losing hundreds of millions of dollars, he never had to pay any taxes. All the while, he was able and enabled by the media, really aided by the media, in creating this facade, this fantasy, this brand of a billionaire, of a winner, of a great businessman, when underneath it all, he's a grifter. He was bleeding hundreds of millions of dollars financially. Most of Trump's core enterprises, from his constellation of golf courses to his conservative Magnet Hotel in Washington, D.C., report losing millions, if not tens of millions of dollars a year after year. His revenue from The Apprentice and from licensing deals is drying up. And several years ago, he sold nearly all the stocks that now might have helped him plug holes in his struggling properties. The tax audit looms. And within the next 4 years, more than $300 million in loans, obligations for which he is personally responsible, will come due. That's important because this is all speculation, obviously, but most people don't think Donald Trump actually ran for president in 2016 because he wanted to be president. Most people don't believe he actually ran for president thinking he would win the presidency. Most people think he ran for president as a giant PR campaign, as a giant branding exercise, as a giant, basically a giant scheme to build his brand even further and to, off of that higher exposure, to make a lot of money. Well, we're seeing now, yeah, maybe he wanted to do that. Maybe his original goal was not to win the presidency, but to have a giant publicity, which CNN and the rest of them gave him $3 to $5 billion in free advertising over the course of the 2016 campaign. Maybe he wanted to do that because he knew he's on the hook personally, not his business. Him personally is on the hook for $300 million in loans over the next few years. Imagine Donald Trump, if reelected, while in the White House, is personally underwater. I saw the number $300 to $400 million. So forget Russia. That is a massive conflict of interest. If you are, as an individual, $300 to $400 million in debt, you, by nature, will take help where you could get it to get out of that debt. Maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe China, as Trump likes to say. I mean, you could go down the list of countries. He's using his Washington, D.C. hotel as a sleazeball revolving door. I mean, he's got Saudi princes, foreign leaders, lobbyists there. So forget Russia, which I always thought was a nonsense Cold War reenactment that didn't have a lot underneath it, fact-based evidence that he was working with the Russians to win the election or whatever. Donald Trump, if he's in office in a second term with $300 million bill that he has to pay, or maybe he'll get out of that too, you don't think Donald Trump is going to make deals with whatever country, whatever oligarch, whatever kleptocrat, plutocrat, war criminal, whoever he's got to alleviate that debt? I think so. For those Russia-gators, I have bad news for you. According to the New York Times, the Russia part of the story was there is no there as far as his tax returns. This from the New York Times big tax story. The returns are some of the most sought after and speculated about records in recent memory. In Mr. Trump's nearly 4 years in office and across his endlessly hyped decades in the public eye, journalists, prosecutors, opposition politicians, and conspiracists have, with limited success, sought to excavate the enigmas of his finances. By their very nature, the filings will leave many questions unanswered, many questions unfulfilled. They comprise information that Mr. Trump has disclosed to the IRS, not the findings of an independent financial examination. They report that Mr. Trump owns hundreds of millions of dollars in valuable assets, but they do not reveal his true wealth, nor do they reveal any previously unreported connections to Russia. So, I said this at the Young Turks. When I was at the Young Turks, I thought Trump wasn't releasing his taxes not because there's something in it that exposes he's working with the Kremlin, but because A, he's probably not really a billionaire, which his taxes would show, and B, he probably hasn't paid taxes in 15 to 20 years. I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. I mean, Trump Jr. basically acknowledged during the campaign, yeah, some of our biggest clients are from Russia. So maybe there's a simpler reasoning for his admiring and showering Putin with adoration. He doesn't want to burn Russia, one of his biggest client nations, for his real estate empire. And he kind of gets a hard-on for dictators and loves authoritarian, murderous dictators. Maybe it was a little more simple and wasn't an espionage Cold War thriller. So I'm just saying, while Cenk, my old boss, while Rachel Maddow, while Washington Post, the New York Times, all of these people were, just totally disregarding journalistic principles, totally tossing out basic, requiring of evidence, getting hysterical day after day. I mean, Rachel Maddow has lost her damn mind for years. Claiming that, Jonathan Chait from the New Yorker claimed that there's evidence Trump has been a Russian asset since the 1980s. Maybe it's a lot simpler. And that's what I said years ago. I was on the record saying, I don't think there's anything in his tax returns that show he's a Russian asset, or that he's secretly conspiring with Russia, or that if he were president, he would be doing Russian favors, which, by the way, it never gets reported, but he did arm the Ukrainian rebels. He did bomb Syria, which is a Russian ally. I mean, he's done things that are not so good for Russia, but that never gets reported. So anyway, the tax, whatever returns the New York Times got, which seemingly were over 2 decades, do not show any evidence of quote-unquote Russian collusion or direct connections to Russia. That doesn't mean zero exists. Like I said, it's public knowledge. Don Jr. admitted it. Some of their biggest clients who have bought Trump properties, who have bought Trump homes, are Russian oligarchs. So, yeah, maybe that's why he's so chummy with Russia. In addition to, he clearly admires authoritarian, murderous leaders. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.